My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Guru Piran Neo, fellow Jnanis. I hope all of you all are doing very well. Today I'm going to continue Mahan's chapter 5. I covered the last time. This chapter 5 is Mahan's experiences of, he says, my staunch faith and love, right? So I covered in part 1 on faith, how Mahan gives examples of his own life of how the faith that he had in himself, in the teachings of the Guru, and also the initiation that he got, and he held on to it. And I spoke about, I will let you read Mahan's description of his faith. A very interesting example that he gave. But I covered in that last talk on what faith is and how the faith in oneself is really important, the faith in one's own ability, the faith on one's, own destiny, and one's own life. I spoke about how, the faith of having that confidence that the divinity is in us. If God is infinite, then the closest distance is with us. So having the faith that we are that divinity packaged differently. So I spoke about that, and Swamiji, speaks about, his own perspective of faith. I don't want to go into Mahan's experiences. You can read that, but I want to pull out what the essence of what I got from this chapter on how, no matter what the circumstances are, a faith in ourselves is really important. Whenever we are, confronted with any challenges in our lives, having faith in oneself and the confidence and the courage itself helps us overcome those challenges. But if we don't have faith in ourselves, whatever we take on, we have already almost lost. So I spoke about faith. I also spoke about blind faith. Many people have blind faith. The first faith I spoke about is about introspection, contemplation, reflection, and service, and understanding one's own power. But the blind faith is where people take it for granted, but without that experiential knowledge, it's secondary knowledge. And you see that sometimes blind faith takes us into blind alleys and areas which is unexplored by us. And when we are confronted by challenges, it doesn't help us. So I spoke about the distinction between the two. Today, I want to speak about love. Swamiji speaks about love in this chapter, the love, the faith and the love that he had for himself, the knowledge that he acquired from the teacher, and holding on to the teachings. And here I want to speak about what that love means. And this is a big topic, right? And sometimes people ask this question, when we are pursuing this spiritual path, should we nurture love for things and so on? And I'll explain, say, well, love is related to desires and all those things. But I said, Mahan's teachings is that it's not that you push out desires, you learn to divinize desires, our aspirations, our goals in life, so that we understand the true meaning and purpose of life. And when we come to the question of purpose of life, we see that as we introspect, as we have faith in ourselves, and as we have love for ourselves and the teachings that the gurus have imparted in us, that question of purpose of life becomes life of purpose. So here I want to spend some time today on love, right? What does actually love means? Mahan has given his perspective, his experience of love. I want to distill that with a little bit more definition of what we mean by love. We really need to, understand what we mean, and so that the meaning is clear and we know that how this concept of love is critical for human life. So I pulled this out from the Wikipedia. So, being a scientist and, using the spiritual compass that essentially looks at logic and scientific ways of understanding key concepts, I wanted to understand what love is so that we are very clear what it means. And we know that this is, the definition. There are many definitions. So one of the definition is that love encompasses a range of strong and positive emotional and mental states. So this is very important because love has an impact on our emotional well-being and our mental well-being. And this is why we see that, in families there is no love, in places that people don't show love, you see that it has a direct impact on emotional and mental states of people. So love has a strong bearing on our emotional and mental state. And from most, it is actually what we call the sublime virtue or good habits. We get those emotional states, the mental states, based on our virtues and our habits that we have. And also our deep interpersonal affection, right? And right up to the most simplest pleasures in life. We love our chocolate bars, we love our food. So it's from the most basic right up to more complex behavior. Love encompasses that. So there's a whole range of examples that is given. Nature's embedded that love in all of us, love in humanity, love in mothers, right? Love in our spouse and children. So nature has built this component in us so that it has a bearing on a software in us called emotional and mental state. So this is an important part of nature that is built in us so that we're able to manage our lives better. So here, love is often seen as, feeling of attraction and emotional attachments, because when we love something, we spend time thinking about it. We spend time, interacting with it or whatever that gives us that love. And we spend time in trying to understand and deepen it. So it's a very important, deep, state of our own existence. And we cannot dismiss it. And it becomes even more intensive as we take this spiritual journey. So it's really important to understand what is it that we mean by love and why love is very important as part of our spiritual journey. It is also related to compassion and a whole range of other emotional states. So again, here, part of the Wikipedia is that, so love is considered to be both positive and negative, and I'll explain that. And you'll see in many parts of Swamiji's book that is also covered, but I'll try to distill this notion of love. It is actually, if you see from a positive perspective, it's a virtue that represents our human beings. The issue of kindness, compassion, affection, there's this unselfishness, this whole idea of benevolent, good for them. Because when you love something, you tend to spend some time and you tend to, give all your best, right? So another aspect is sometimes love could be, a more kind of instinctive. Sometimes it represents a more grosser form of, vanity. I love myself. The ego grows. There is also love that leads to toxic relationships. So there are a whole range of love, emotional state that leads us to, the state of our mind and the state of, peace and tranquility or lack of peace and tranquility. So again, it represents that subtle, positive aspects of, compassion, kindness, but it also has that, negative element of possessiveness and ego and vanity and so on, right? So, and there's this obsessiveness. Sometimes you become overly attached to this, some things or person or something, and you see that it is clouds one's own, mental state of, and also intellectual state. So there are various ways one, and this component of love impacts us. See, and I won't go into details, but what love plays a major role in, it impacts our interpersonal relationships, our psychological state, and also I think the most important thing is that it also love is critical for us as a species, because without love, uh, through love is when we see that this notion of people coming together, they share their own DNA, what we call procreation, and it's a way that our species continues, over generation after generation. So we see that this notion of love has this positivity, and also that a veil of negativity that we need to balance between the two. So I want to take a spiritual journey here on love. So we've seen this both sides of love. How do we differentiate the two? And one hand, there's this, goodness, kindness, and there's one the other hand on vanity and selfishness, and kind of ego sets in. So how do we separate the two? And you see that, as I mentioned earlier, that when we take a spiritual path, we need to really understand every thought, every experience that passes through our mind. And whenever something passes through our mind, it has two important impacts. It is either sukha, whether we like it, or dukkha. This is one aspect, right? And oftentimes, most human beings will crave towards the goodness and try to push out the negativity, right? But there's also another component that as we introspect deeply, though it may be sukha and dukkhas, does those experiences expand the mind? Does those experiences, make the mind deeper? It gives you, helps you to, develop new skill sets to be able to overcome those challenges, or uh, enable you to expand to see the goodness, and that goodness percolates in every facet of our life. So this is where we see that the introspection, contemplation, and reflection is very important, and that translates into our own actions in the form of service. This is the positive element. In the negative way, we become more possessive and become more constricted in our mind, and our actions, sometimes can be damaging to us and the people around us. So this is something that So, but the key thing of the spiritual journey is that as we introspect, contemplate, reflect, we start becoming aware of our own spiritual compass. And the spiritual compass helps us to sift out how to manage Sukha Dukkha, and sift out what makes our mind expand, and what makes our mind deepen, and what makes our mind shrunken, and so on. So this notion of that, the whole idea of meditation is to help us discover the spiritual compass, so that we have a very scientific, objective, logical way of understanding this important emotional state, so that it aids us towards, expanding, being enlightened by our journey, and not to be too possessive. And we eventually come to a beautiful state of, we love our life such that we live to outlive everything. So again, understanding this important component or important values that is embedded in our DNA by nature itself, so that we are able to, through our own thoughts and experience and our words, we have an impact on the broader community, the broader, people of our own species, and it also helps us to continue, our own species to the future. So again, it's an important aspect of life. I want to then come to is that what is the subtle truth of love, right? And I've been reading a lot for many years on love. There are some great writers and thinkers. If you get a chance, read the books by Leo Bruscalia, who's written a lot on love. How we as a species, love is what keeps us going. Love is what helps us pass information generation after generation. Love is what essentially makes our species successful and help us not only manage us as a species, but also look after all the other species. So this is, and so I started reading a lot and reflecting on this experience that Mahan has put in his document in his book, and try to understand what is the fundamental underpinning of this emotional state. So here it is. I've read Rumi and other great saints and sages, and here love is this is the subtle truth. Whatever you love, you are. So, and this is so important because it defines who we are. And if we love and crave for things that are, uh, makes our mind shrunken, that's what we become. If our love is something more universal, more divine, more, altruistic, more expansionary, more, forgiving, more acceptance, we see that that's what we become, right? So we see that, love is a key software or key thing that binds us. Us means our personality with that divinity in us, or the lack of it. If our focus is on something which is destructive, which is, a very negative, if that's what we love. And there are some people that love, torturing people, love harming people, love annoying people, and you see that, that's what they become, you see, and the world reacts to them in that way. But you also have, people who are more lofty in their thoughts, more generous in their thoughts, more patient, with people, more kind. And you see that that's what we become. So you see that love binds our personalities to the things that we wed and weld to, the values that we wed ourselves, our mind to. And, if we are wedded and welded to the loftiness, gracefulness, kindness, the universality, that's what our personality starts transforming and shaping. But if our love is for personalities that are very destructive, like the Ravanas and others, we see that we become that. And that is what, because that's what we're going to think about. What we love is what we always think about. What we love is what we always want to emulate. What we love is what we always want to partake in. Eventually, that shapes our mind and our personality. And Rumi beautifully puts this out, that this is the truth. This is the subtle truth. Whatever you love, that's what you become. That's what you are. Right? So think very carefully what you love. And this is where the spiritual compass is really important. And you can test it out. It helps you to embrace that spiritual dimension in you. If you love that, and if you harness that, you see that you are able to, particularly the spiritual compass in us, that guides us, that gives us that journey within us. Recently we celebrated Deepavali. I gave this explanation of that Uli, deeper Uli, the inner light in us, whatever we call it, the soul force or God force. If we have that fondness and love for that to be, and we introspect on it, contemplate, reflect, and meditate, think about it constantly, we see that deeper holy, our mind attains that Paranjoti, or that light that eventually shows us the path which is Deepavali, the path of enlightenment. So we see that, as what Rumi says, that that spiritual compass gives us a very important aspects, a very important nurtures a very important quality for the mind and the intellect to do, which is viveka, ability to separate, that which makes the mind shrunken and that which makes the mind expanded and lofty. It helps us understand what is transitory and what is eternal, what is finite and what is infinite, what is perishable and what is imperishable. So the love for that divinity within us, the spiritual compass, enables the mind to become that expanded and the intellect to be sharp. And this is what Rumi is trying to convey. Here he goes on to explain this a little bit more. He says that what should we love? He says that love is the sheer abundance of good fortune. You see, so when you have that love in ourselves, that universal divine love, you get that abundance. Abundance means, as I spoke about the good fortunes, what does that mean? It's the 10 capitals. It starts off with the spiritual capital, the emotional capital, the mental capital, the stamina, and slowly you see that as you go through, natural capital, intellectual capital, eventually we attain that economic capital. We will never be poor in this life. So, but it starts off with acquiring that good fortune. Love is about that abundance. Love is about that expansion. You have so much inner resources to be able to not only make your life better, but also make the lives of other people better. And this is what Rumi shares. And one who focuses in that love for the self, love for that spiritual compass, love for one's own divinity, you see that, you discover that abundance. That love for the divinity within us also gives us the love of total openness of the heart. The heart opens, it melts, it embraces. There is no more that, that I am big and you are small. All this, inferiority complex and superior complex completely, dissolves. So this is what that love for that oneself and that divinity leads to. The love is also the mirror of our divine beauty, right? When we express this, when we see everything in unison, when we see, everything is part and parcel of the divine, symphony, we see that it starts with us, because a symphony all starts from within ourselves, and we see our own divinity. As somebody said, when we discover the divinity in us, the temple, the divinity within the temple of our hearts and our mind, we see that the divine beauty is everywhere. This is the love that, Rumi and Mahan are speaking about. Love is the eternal divine blessings. To experience this is in itself a blessing, because it comes from divinity itself. And an ordinary human mind misses this, finds faults, finds the grossness, unable to get that refinement. And when you see everywhere the refinement and divinity, that in itself is a blessing. It says, love is the righteous divine guidance. As I said earlier, that Deepa Oli that leads to the Deepavali, that is the path of enlightenment, right? It guides us. It becomes our spiritual compass. Love is the religion. It is about that introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, and that service. You see, we see that that is the religion of, humanity. And if you have that love as the core of your religion, you would see all religions as one. Love is the holy book, he says. You see that in every book, it speaks about the human aspects of, the humanity. And the humanity is about that oneness. Love is the path and direction. It takes us, it guides us. It is the, lighthouse that guides us in the dark of our life. It gives us that light towards that salvation. This love is the master. You know, whatever, people do or upset or challenges, the moment love comes into your mind, everything dissolves. It is the master of, you know, overcoming dukkhas, keeping you in check from all the sugars and the egos. Love helps you master yourself. It brings the GP Mahan's value, the gratitude, the goodness, the godliness. It gives you that patience, perseverance, persistence. It helps you master. It gives you the agility of the mind. It helps you to be humble. It helps you to learn to accept everything. And finally, the path of nobility. You see, love is the one who masters all things. As I said earlier, it gives you access to the 10 capitals, but also gives you access to that spiritual compass to master everything in life. So love is our mother. We are all born of love. So here, Rumi describes that love is essence core to our DNA, right? So, and it's really important. So love, even Mahan, if you read his experiences of the love for the Guru, love for discovering the divinity, you see elements of this in Mahan's own experience. Now, this comes back to this notion that, there are conditional love and unconditional love. Let me define what conditional love. Conditional love is that we permeate this love or the fondness with an expectation. And when we don't get what we expect, we get disappointed. And most people will stop loving things. This is temporary. It doesn't give you that salvation or the peace. As a matter of fact, if you don't get it, your peace of mind is gone. But I like this beautiful quote that, by Ulrich Hutchinson. He says that, unconditional love, that means something tells you, look, I've got to go and do this. Something tells you that I see sufferings and, have the capacity to be able to make a difference, whether it's emotional, people have difficulty with emotional or mental state, or don't understand something, or, financial or resource wise. And you say, okay, I have the resources to be able to do this, the inner resources to be able to do this without any expectation, right? He says unconditional love is about that. It's the outer expression of the inner peace. When you have inner peace, there's no boundaries for that love. When somebody is seeking this, is in distress, in challenge, is being challenged, you see that the peace within you is able to reach out to them. The last, the least, lost, the lonely, you feel it, you experience it, because you are in a universal state that you become more sensitive to the needs of the people. And that's what love is. And that's what, if you see the essence of Mahan's teachings are, is that he was searching for this knowledge of self-realization. When his guru showed him, he said, I want to give it to everybody, irrespective of who they are. And he worked really hard, because what was given to him required a lot of effort, but he says most people would not be able to get it. So he researched and discovered new, simple ways to impart that knowledge. And this I Got book that he wrote is his, journey of unlocking the secret and sharing that with everyone. And even at the age of 80 years old, he was traveling around the world to teach people this. For what? That unconditional love, that gratitude, the GP Mahan's quality, the gratitude and the goodness to share this. And this is an expression of that inner peace. So when those emotional states percolates in your mind, know that it comes from the divinity within you, that inner peace. And this is what Ulrich Hutchinson, and this is what I saw in Mahan's own journey of how the love and the fondness, he beautifully writes And there's that, he says that come and acquire this knowledge, this knowledge of self-realization. He says that, I have attained that, ultimate experience of God realization. I want to share this with everybody. And he beautifully writes this in the book that, come and I'll give it to you without any, expectation. That's unconditional love. And finally, how do we get this unconditional love? How do we get that divine love that is percolating in us? And I love this quote. He says, you don't have to search outside. You don't get it from the nice clothing that you buy or the nice cars that you have, or, the aspirational spouse that you're looking out for, or all those things. You see, you would never get that because all that will be temporary only. He says that if you really want to discover that love, that universal divine love, he says, close your eyes, fall in love, stay there. He says that the greatest experience that one gets of that universal love is from that self itself. You see, that spark of divinity that is unconditional, that is powering you and powering everything else, and gives you that universal peace century that Mahan was speaking about. Just close your eyes, reflect on it, introspect on it, contemplate on it, reflect on it, and you see that unconditional love percolates in our mind. And suddenly you see that, that wow experience, that eureka moment happens. And you say, stay there. What does the staying there means? Even after you come out of your meditation, that universal love still percolates in our mind, percolates in our thoughts, percolates in our speech, percolates in our actions. So he says, close your eyes, take that inner journey, fall in love with the self, and allow that self that is in its unconditional, universal state to manifest every facet of your life. And you see that at that moment, Swamiji becomes meditation, meditation becomes Swamiji, or love becomes you and you become that love, right? So, and this is what Guru Sangaran and, Guru Sangaran says, don't expect an angel, be the angel. Don't expect change, be the change. Don't expect love, be that love. Percolate that love, and share that love. And that's what you see, your life becomes a lovely life. And this is what throughout the book Mahan writes about. So you don't need to go anywhere external to discover that love. Nothing material will give us this, universal love. Sandosha.